Albert Einstein once said, "Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act." Recently, SFU resource professor Mark Jaccard found himself blocking a Burlington Northern Santa Fe coal train. He acted. It's an act that was a bit out of character for him, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, because you're a scientist, you're a resource economist. Simple question. The one we should all know the answer to: what is a fossil fuel?
So we call it a fossil fuel because it's in these sedimentary, these are fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. And they're the product of plants and animals that lived tens, hundreds of millions of years ago, got buried in sedimentary layers, and under pressure, deep in the earth, especially the oil and natural gas, got chemically transformed under high temperatures and pressures, and then migrated and found areas where the rock was impermeable, cap rock, and it ended up in these reservoirs where we find oil and natural gas. The coal is more from woody material in marshes and bogs, didn't get the same amount of pressure, and that's why sometimes some people even call peat a fossil fuel, although it's right near the surface usually, and it hasn't compressed very much. And some of the most primitive kinds of coal actually are almost like peat, like you can see the bits of grasses and sedge and reeds embedded in them. They haven't been transformed by the pressure. So it's this transition, yeah.
A sustainable fossil fuel?
Oh.
Title of a book you wrote once?
Yes, basically, every energy system we have, every energy source we have, whether it's wind power or run-of-river or hydropower in British Columbia, they have environmental impacts. So fossil fuel use, like whether we're talking about the oil sands up in Alberta, or maybe natural gas and fracking and so on, has local impacts. But I would argue that we have a lot of fossil fuels, and if we use them, and don't send them to people who are putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then there's no reason to stop using fossil fuels.
Or if we do send them, as you pointed out earlier, you say, you're not getting our fossil fuel unless you do it properly and burn it properly and all of that, because you're contributing to climate change big time, and we want to save the world for our kids and our grandchildren so they're not so mad at us one day.
Yeah.
So LNG, what is it?
So So natural gas, conventional natural gas is like found in that deposit as I was talking about. But there are also rocks that have natural gas and oil sometimes embedded in them. And you can frack, it's shale rock. So it's a sedimentary layer of shale from clays and so on.
Underneath the ground.
Way under the ground. Some of it could be close to the surface, but you fracture it, you put high pressure and shatter it, and some of the natural gas is released, or in some cases some of the oil is released. And that fracturing of the rock is called fracking, and that's what brings the natural gas up. Now, normally we will transport natural gas, so you can extract the natural gas, then you clean out whatever liquids are in there, water and other different products that are in there, petroleum products. You get pure natural gas, or almost pure, and you can put it in a pipeline and ship it around North America. But what happens when you say, maybe we could export this across the ocean, and we're not going to build a pipeline? You could build a pipeline. The natural gas pipeline goes across the Mediterranean from Africa. But if you're going to go all the way to Japan or Korea or wherever, you're going to liquefy the natural gas. So you're going to get a gigantic refrigerator. And think about, in your home, electricity use, refrigerators, the biggie. You're going to get a gigantic refrigerator in Kitimat or wherever, and you're going to cool down that natural gas until it's in a liquid state so that you can have it highly concentrated, put it on a ship, send it over to Korea. So LNG is liquefied natural gas. Fracking is an unconventional form of getting natural gas.
Right. So do you use a lot of water when you frack? Do you destroy the water system? What about the air? What's the environmental impact of fracking?
Right. And I'm not an expert in this area. I read a lot of work of experts, and it can be done badly, so that you're having effect possibly on the local water table. It depends what kind of materials you put down, and that's mostly secret information from the companies, but there are approval processes. And so there's a lot of worries also that it could even cause more seismicity, more mini earthquake tremors and things like that. So there are movies like Gasland that are made about this and talk about the horrific possibilities. I also know a lot of people in the U.S. Department of Energy and elsewhere who can give you a lot of examples of where it's been done well. So
Right.
I'm not someone who's totally against
Okay, but in British
fracking.
Columbia, we have to make decisions, and we need to make informed decisions, and not from our gut, but from the facts. What's the truth, as you point out, from the federal government level, BC government level, a scientist level.
Right.
Because I'm not going to protest something if I don't know enough about it.
Right. I wouldn't be, if I was in a local area and I didn't like how they were doing the fracking there and I didn't feel that they'd been properly regulated and I had some good independent scientists helping me say, yes, this is the thing that's causing the problem I have, that's one thing. But in general, I'm not someone who's opposed to us getting natural gas and even getting it from shale rock.
Okay.
I don't rule that out. It has to be done right. And so I end up coming back to the questions we started with earlier, though, which is, and then am I sending that all over the world and people are going to burn it? Because, you know, politicians and the industry will say this is the cleanest burning fossil fuel. But if we converted all of the places where we use coal and oil around the planet to natural gas, we would still cause the same environmental destruction.
So it's clean burning, but if the masses burn it, all the third world countries burn it, and the rich countries burn it, then it will cause climate change.
Yep.
Bottom line.
Yep. You get to make electricity. An electricity plant that burns coal produces about twice as much CO2 per kilowatt hour as an electricity plant that uses natural gas. So that still means the natural gas plants are putting out a lot of carbon dioxide.
Okay, but say I live in Kitimat, and my lifestyle depends on LNG or exporting LNG or something like that. And
Well, it doesn't now.
no, but if all goes as it seems to be going, it might.
Right.
At some point.
Right.
So, or anything. Your dad's been a coal miner all his life, and they shut the mine down. Like, how does it affect the community?
Right. So you have to ask yourself, should we be running around building these things, new coal mines, if we're going to have to shut them down, new LNG plants, should we be rapidly expanding the fossil fuel industry, coal, oil, and natural gas? There aren't people's jobs dependent on natural gas in Kitimat today. So
No.
should you run out and do that?
But Premier Christy Clark ran on, this is going to bring billions of dollars to our province.
Right. So what she said was, we might be able to build this many plants over time. And as an economist, I do laugh a little bit at that. And I don't mean to say she doesn't have some good advisors, but what she was doing was calculating the difference between the price that a producer can get for natural gas in Canada today, in Western Canada,
Right.
with the cost of natural gas in China when delivered. Well, there's an extreme differential right now, and we know how markets work. They're going to come together on that. The Chinese are going to start doing their own fracking of natural gas.
Right.
There's going to be other people trying to trade there. So I'm not saying that we won't build one LNG plant but I don't think it'll make the kind of revenues that she thinks it'll make, to pay off the debt of British Columbia over time.
Right.
That's
Okay, and
that's good
if an
election
LNG
talk.
tanker, I assume there'll be such a thing, an LNG tanker falls apart in the middle of the ocean, then what?
That's fine.
That's okay?
Yeah. Poof.
Oh, poof. Like whales don't die?
Oh, well, unless they're just right beside it.
Right
I
beside
guess.
it, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
I'm not an expert in this, but I mean, maybe a lot of methane
Right,
would get up there. And
but we're-
methane is a potent, so natural gas is basically
Right.
methane, and it's a potent greenhouse gas.
And then there's CFCs, and we don't have time to talk about them, but that's another story another day. And I read an article yesterday on brown seaweed. If we would actually make ethanol from brown seaweed, that would be a way to fuel a car or something.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know.
there are a lot of things like this. Algae could be used, but none of this will happen if we don't have public policies, if governments don't put in policies that say that either regulate you
Right.
can't make steel if you don't capture the CO2, you can't make electricity, or say we're not going to expand the coal port if you don't do this. You can't be using oil sands unless you use it to make electricity or hydrogen. If we don't have those rules, we're going to keep sort of just diluting ourselves
Sure.
as we head down this other
I
path.
get that. We're a natural resource-based province. We know that. It fuels much of our income, but we can look at renewable, at wind, at solar, all of those things, at the great technologies today. all of that. And your next book is?
Well, the title right now. I finished writing it, but agents are still talking to publishers.
It's a secret.
Well, and so the title my working title is Deluding Ourselves. Yeah, it's about trying to explain now why are we so bad on the climate issue. We did pretty good on acid rain. We did pretty good on local air pollution, and then other things like lead and chlorofluorocarbons.
And forestry. We're way better in the forest today than we were.
So
50 years ago.
So it's looking like part of the problem, I mean, this is a global issue. We need global action. You know, the atmosphere is a global commons. And so it makes it easier for someone like Stephen Harper to say, well, we'll expand the oil sands, but as soon as there's a global agreement, we'll be part of it.
Sure, and if you're assessing the environment, and a panel's assessing the environment, they have to be people who are not on one side or the other. I get that. We could talk all day. We're out of time.
All right, it was a real
thank
pleasure.
You. Nice to see you again. I look forward to deluding ourselves. Okay. Professor Mark Jaccard. And remember, you can catch our conversations on YouTube or follow me on Twitter at Fanny Kiefer. There will be many more well-studied, insightful, entertaining guests to come. Thanks for watching Shaw TV and being here with me today.